And welcome into A Closer Look. I am your host, Dwayne Nelson, and we are glad to have you here today. And with me, of course, is Scotty Carrier, Lieutenant Scotty Carrier with the Johnson City Police Department. We are so glad to have you here. And you've been with the police department for several years, I know.
Yes, sir, for 25 years.
Wow, that's a long time. And the police department has been around for how long?
Oh goodness, the actual Johnson City Police Department, I couldn't tell you that, but it's well over 100 years.
100
I do know
years,
that
right.
then.
So a lot of things change within departments. I know a lot of the departments around our area are accredited, and Johnson City Police Department is one of those that was one of the first ones around that got accredited.
Yes, sir. We received our initial accreditation back in 1993, and then we've been reaccredited every 3 years since that time then. So.
And that's a pretty big process that you have to get through.
Absolutely. In fact, we have an accreditation manager that's a sergeant. That's his full-time job, is to make sure that we go through that process every 3 years, that we get accredited, and that we get the materials that we need for that the accreditation board is looking for then. So it's quite a process, yes, sir.
And those standards are really standards that are looked at all the way across the country, because it really, I'm sure, makes a difference in the personnel that you put into place, how they're trained, and it just kind of goes through that whole process.
Yes, sir. There's a lot of different standards that you have to meet, and it is a nationwide organization, and so we're proud of that affiliation that we have with them, and so we take that very seriously, especially with it being on a national level, on a national scale like that we want to make sure that we're doing all that we can to be. Our goal is to be a professional organization, and we believe that helps us achieve that desire then.
Unlike the public wants to think, there is that thing where you have a lot of things that you have to do besides write tickets and stop cars and, as they call it, harassing the public.
Absolutely, yes. So there's a whole lot more that goes into law enforcement than what you see for 1 hour on television of the evening. I can tell you that.
Absolutely. Summer traffic safety, and let's talk about that. I know with summer months coming up, folks are out, they're busier, they're trying to go places, so there's more traffic on the road.
Yes, sir, there sure is.
And let me kind of gear toward motorcycle safety, because that seems to be, it seems like this year already, and we've not really even hit summer yet,
right,
that we've had so many motorcycle accidents. And that's something I guess you're trying to get the drivers to be aware and just take that extra second to look.
Right. Let's start with the motorcycle driver themselves. They're very vulnerable because they don't have protection around them like you do when you're inside of a car. So they need to make sure, the motorcyclist needs to make sure they're obviously wearing a helmet. That's going to give them some added protection. But they have to especially be hyper vigilant, because you can be a very good motorcycle driver and still be killed in a car wreck.
That's true.
That might not even be your fault. Somebody pulls right out in front of you. So you have to, if you're a motorcycle rider, you have to especially be defensive. But now on the other side of it, the folks that are driving cars need to also be very vigilant, to be watching for motorcyclists, because realizing that the motorcycle versus car, the car is going to win in that. And I know that nobody would want to needlessly imperil somebody that's on a motorcycle. So we always encourage you, if you're in a vehicle, make sure that you're not in such a hurry that you don't take time to watch for every single type of vehicle that may be coming down the roadway, to include a motorcyclist. And just realize, when you're driving a car, you're in possession of a weapon. You need to treat it like you would a weapon. And so therefore, be responsible, make sure that you look both ways to make sure that there are no vehicles, to include motorcycles, coming towards you.
And what can, say, a motorcycle owner do to, I guess, enhance their being seen and being visual?
Well, obviously you can have a headlight on. Day or nighttime, you need to have a headlight on. We strongly encourage that as well. Then that will help as far as being able to, for the motors to be able to see you if you're on a motorcycle.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, during the day or night, if you utilize that, that may be something that will make a big difference.
Absolutely.
And just that flash of light for the car or truck or whoever driver can be able to be able to look at that real quickly.
Right. Yes, sir.
Let's talk about the city's crash data.
Okay.
Good, bad, or indifferent?
Well, that's going to be based upon your subjective opinion. What I can tell you, though, is that last year, 2016, we had 3,800 crashes that occurred in Johnson City. Perennially, we tend to run around that in the 35 to 38 range. That seems to be our perennial average. What I would like to point out with that, though, is that we can go every year, perennially, we can see this occur, that our biggest time for crashes is on Friday afternoons, during the early afternoon into the very early evening, 1 to 7 o'clock. And I ask people, say, why is it different on Friday than Monday afternoon, Wednesday afternoon? And it's basically, the only thing that I can conclude is that people are not focusing on their driving. And they've worked a hard week and they're eager, I've got to get home, get my yard mowed, we're going on vacation, so they become distracted more easily. Or they get in a hurry to get home. And so our leading cause of crashes also perennially is following too closely, the rear ender crash that's following too closely. But now last year, what's interesting, we started tracking our inattentive driving. We hadn't done that until last year. Right. But now, it used to be following too closely was first, failure to yield was second. Well, since we started tracking our inattentive driving, it has moved in front of failure to yield to where it's now the second leading cause of crashes in Johnson City. Wow. So inattentive driving being fidgeting with the radio, texting, doing something to where you're not paying attention to the roadway, and therefore we have a crash that occurs as a result of it.
Whenever, I guess, social media come along,
Sure.
I guess it seemed like, and then more people buying cell phones, that the crashes did increase because of just not being, attentive.
Well, there's three things you have to have when you're driving a vehicle. You need manual skills, you need visual skills, you need cognitive skills, thinking abilities. A cell phone distracts in all three categories. You're holding it manually, you're visually looking at it, you're cognitively checked out of driving because you're reading this text that you're receiving, or you're trying to send a text. So that's going to impair you in all three categories. Now, cell phones have been great as far as, like, to give you an example, people break down on the roads. Now they have help. They have help coming almost immediately. It used to be when I was on patrol back in the 1990s, when they were broke down on the side of the road, you pulled over, you called somebody for them, you stayed with them till they get some help. Now they almost always have help coming, and that's due to cell phones. But there's also a flip side to that, to where it's becoming a distraction on the roadways. And I think that's definitely why we're seeing our inattentive driving has moved into number 2 as far as crashes go. Now, with that said, they might be following too closely, is still number 1, but they may have been inattentive texting when they rear-ended somebody. So the two could actually go hand in hand. Those numbers could actually be even higher, and we're just not able to track it.
Do you need a couple of car lengths between you and the other person to kind of secure that person may be looking at something and realize, I need to stop here, and they just hit the brakes, and then you've got to have that room to stop.
Yeah, and space is going to depend upon your traveling speed, because obviously the faster you're going, the longer it's going to take you to stop. If you're on the interstate, you have to increase your distance from the vehicle in front of you versus if you're driving around on a 30-mile-an-hour residential zone. The average perception reaction time is basically 1.5 seconds from the time you perceive something to where your mind can tell your foot to get to the brake. That's going to take about 1.5 seconds. Well, if you're on the interstate traveling 70 miles an hour or approximately 100 feet a second, you're going to go 150 feet before you even begin to get to the brake. So that's why that stopping distance is so critical.
This data, this crash data, is that something that you have at the Johnson City Police Department done for a long time, or is that something new that you're another tool that you're using?
No, sir. We've tracked that annually since going way back since I've been here in the 1990s. So we've been doing it every year since then.
Now, you also have a way to track offenders in neighborhoods and that sort of thing, like sexual offenders and that sort of thing. Through, I think, mapping that you've all done as far as with the police department.
Well, we do. There's a sex offender registry to where that's anybody can go and get access to that and stuff. But we do have a like for example, if we pull you over on a traffic stop or something, it will show us if there is a hit on you or if there's a warrant that's out for your arrest. That will pull up in our system. But also what's unique to our system is that we can, if we pull you over and we run your driver's license, it will show if you have any history with us at the Johnson City Police Department. For example, if you've been arrested on a burglary. Well, if we pull you over at 11 o'clock at night in a residential area for whatever reason, and all of a sudden we get this hit on our system that says you've been arrested for burglary in Johnson City, now all of a sudden we might want to look a little bit more in depth into well, why are you in this neighborhood, kind of thing, and start asking some different questions, so to speak, though, to help us in crime prevention.
Has the PDA system going paperless, basically, has that helped your department as far as keeping records and being able to find somebody on the side of the road that may need to be taken off the road?
Yeah, absolutely. It helps us get information so much faster. Just through emails, we get access to our emails, right away, unless we're detained on a call or something. But we're going to be able to get much faster access to that. If I need data for shows such as this, if I need to come on here, I can go to our IT people and say, "Here's the information that I need to get." They can pull it up in very minimal time versus the old system of 1, 2, 3 kind of thing. So it's absolutely been a great tool for us then.
Let's talk just briefly about scams. That seems to be summertime thing, a wintertime thing. It's just year round.
Right. Yes, sir. It is.
So it seems like you get rid of one, you end up getting another one. Home repair projects, that seems to be a big one there.
Right. It's a lot of times, and you'll get that more in the summertime, where somebody will knock at your door and say, "Hey, I notice looks like you need a new roof or something," and they want to go ahead and do some work on your roof, or you want us to trim your hedges or something like that. Now, the key there is, with any scam, don't give away any personal information. If they're at your door unsolicited, don't give away any type of personal information. Now, but you have to understand where a scam crosses the line from being civil in nature to being criminal in nature. If money exchanges hands and they do work, but you feel like the work's been inadequate, you have a civil issue because you actually exchanged money. Now, if money was not exchanged, then now you can get into if the work was not done, like for example, you gave them $500, they never came back to do the work, okay, now you can, absent a contract, then now you get into a criminal area where they've defrauded you, basically. But if you paid them $500 and they did some real shoddy work, that's civil in nature, and it actually is not a police matter at that point in time. But be very careful for that. During the winter time, you get the things that pertain to Christmas and stuff like that that you need to be watchful for as well.
Well, we are talking with Scotty Carrier, Lieutenant with the Johnson City Police Department. We're going to be talking more about scams when we return here on A Closer Look.